Can I also just thank the team that's on duty here? Kai, who oversees the setup, is here 1 o'clock every Sunday, and he leaves when the place is restored to its desired intent, and that's normally around about 6:37. So that's a full day of moving chairs, moving equipment around. And lest I forget to say it, this makes my heart happy. If you are a little unfamiliar with why we do what we do, we're really not big fans of the stage. I think the stage gets in the way of the community, of the family, of the tribe doing life together. And we really like doing it down here. Even the musicians, we want to build away from any semblance of looking to a person, hence the circular notion of the musos, and then the focus is here. This was the only thing Jesus said: every time you do this in memory of me. He didn't say it of worship. He didn't say it of teaching, scripture reading. He said this. This has to be, we believe, as the representation of Jesus crucified, risen, and ascended. This is the picture where we want to remind ourselves of the beauty, the wonder, the mystery of our Christian faith. And it is a mystery, and we'll talk about that later in the year. So, Contend. Moving from Encounter, which was really just a time for us to deepen our muscle group of worship. Most of us grow up in a kind of an evangelical world where we sing 3.5 songs, and that's our bundle. And if we come late, we get 2.5. If we come really late, we get 1.5. By the time I finish my coffee, I've got half a song. And we put that down to worship, when actually there is a deep and a depth that God calls us to engage Him in worship, and its diversity. And so it was so much fun just enjoying a chunky period or periods of worship, developing our muscle group. I want us, please, to position ourselves for some worship that's more robust, that's combative. If you take any time to read the Song of Moses, the Song of Miriam, the Song of Deborah, if you read some of the great Psalms authored by David and other poets, you will see how combative some of them really are. And this evening, we're just going to get a little peep into what it means to be engaged as a community in spiritual warfare. So that is our theme, Contend, subtitled A People at War. I was in Israel many years ago, and this is not a political statement. I was merely visiting the nation, and there were many things that struck me about the land. There's always the historical curiosity, for me as a history lover, of places as ancient as that. I felt the same when we went to Turkey. Where were we recently? Albania. That same sense of antiquity. You walking on the streets of thousands of years. But I remember being struck by many things, but one of them is the ongoing posture of readiness. Again, not a political statement, a sociological reality that every young Jew and old is always in a posture of readiness, because war, as we saw in October last year, can break out any moment, and you are completely outnumbered. So every one of them knows where their weapon is. Every one of them knows where their call sign is. Every one of them knows where their call-up point is, because minutes count. As a military history lover and student, the Six-Day War was a remarkable moment. Again, not political, but how rapidly Israel had to mobilize. And I'm saying that because it's the best, more modern metaphor that I have, a story that I have, to get us to understand where we need to be. As a community of people on our tippy toes, ready to engage in spiritual combat in a heartbeat, where we are always ready. And it's not just me, I, myself, it's we, us, ours. And so the text we have used tonight is, they'll bring it up again, is Jude verses 3 and 4. Dear friends, though I was very eager to write to you about the salvation we share, notice his very enthusiastic language. I felt compelled. I was eager. I was compelled to write and to urge you. I mean, those are all passionate words. For an 8 on the Enneagram, that's my language right there. I was eager, I was compelled, and I'm urging you. That's what you'll hear and feel from me all the time. To contend for the faith that was once for all entrusted to God's holy people, distinctively different. It was interesting sitting with Meryl as she read the Afrikaans to me, and I listened to all the words. And the Afrikaans word is uitstandig. It means to be completely separate and distinctively different from. And Paul's writing, and he says, I'm eager, I compel you, I urge you to fight for the faith because we are a completely different people. And that, dear friends, is the invitation of this adventure for certain individuals whose condemnation was written about long ago, have secretly slipped in among you. They're ungodly people who pervert the grace of God into a license of immorality. It's interesting, he chooses two things, Paul does. One is those who choose the grace of God, quote unquote, which Dietrich Bonhoeffer says is not grace at all, to legitimize their licentious lifestyles, immorality, any form of sexual contact that is not between a husband and a wife forever, between a man and a woman forever, is according to this ungodly people. And who deny Jesus Christ, our only sovereign and Lord. Those are the two things, the battlefronts, he's saying, that they were facing and we are facing. Battlefront number one is sexual immorality. Battlefront number two is the denying of Jesus Christ as the only sovereign and Lord. Now, some other translations. The Wycliffe translation says, who strive strongly for the faith. The Voice, I don't really know what the Voice is, but it pops up on my online search, says, continue struggling for the faith. It's ever-present tense. It's what I do all the time. The MSG version, or as Stu calls it, the Message. And you fight with everything you have in you for this faith. Oh, I love Peterson. You fight with everything you've got. That's the posture of readiness that we're being invited into. And then the Amplified version, of course, says you fight strenuously for the defense of the faith. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the intro invitation. Now, what does contend mean? Well, the Webster's Dictionary, and forgive me for being a little technical, I think it helps. The Webster's Dictionary means to strive in opposition. In other words, we are opposing someone and something. Now, that is so uncool in the world in which we live, and I'll give you some more quotes. And I know that. I understand this is very foreign language to you. It's probably a little offensive. It's outside of your world, which wants peace and justice. As long as you believe what I believe, that's justice. And we'll read that in just a moment. It's to dispute. I don't believe what you're saying is true. It's to struggle. It's to fight, Webster's argues. The Bible translation says it's to dispute, and I mistyped that. It's to describe the strain to which a contestant is put. Now, where we get that from is David Gucic in his Jude commentary. I love this. He said the ancient Greek word, contend, translates from the athletic world, from wrestling. It means it's a strengthened form to agonize. Therefore, contend speaks of hard and diligent work. Now, in all of that collage, are you getting the feel? Do you understand a little bit of the invitation? This is not, Jesus, please make me happy. Jesus, please give me an A in my grade paper. This is not, Jesus, can you give me a boyfriend or a girlfriend or can someone say I look cute tonight? This is something else. This is substantive, it's combative, it requires fire in our bones. It requires Paul to eagerly write to them, compel them, and urge them. It's very different. There's a little verse I was reading this afternoon after I typed up my notes, and it's 1 John. John was one of the 12 who walked with Jesus. In fact, some would argue it was his best friend. But he said this, the reason the Son of Man appeared was to destroy the devil's work. The cross was the ultimate battleground. And we will take some time in future weeks to talk about that a little bit. I think Ty did a fabulous job of something similar a few months back. No one who is born of God will continue to sin. No one who is born of God will continue to sin. What does he say here? There are ungodly people. They pervert the grace of God into a license for immorality. Of course you can sin. Of course you can sleep with your boyfriend or girlfriend or live together. Of course you can. God's a gracious God. God will forgive you. He knows about your sin before you've sinned. That's kind of not in the scriptures like that. No one who is born of God will continue to sin by grace. Because God's seed remains in them. They cannot go on sinning because they have been born of God. How do I know I'm walking with Jesus? When sin breaks me. It's not, oh, well, F that. I'm by grace. I am broken when my mindset, my language, my action, my deeds don't reflect the beauty, wonder, peace, joy of Jesus. I am broken on the inside. That's when I know I'm born of God. Not because I was homeschooled, I went to a Christian school, Christian college, or I just do my thing. It's I know that I love Jesus when I'm bust up on the inside. When I stumble over my own humanity and fragility. We're not calling each other to a perfectionism. We're calling each other to a life of grace. So that if I sin, when I sin, my instant reaction, oh God, I am so sorry. You with me? Okay. So we're a people at war. We might not agree with that. We might not like the language that's used. And yet it's the truth, even when it's foreign to our cultural sensibilities. In the 21st century, people find any language around war or warfare to be very fun. Now, there are some weirdos. Meryl and I have been around for almost 50 years. We have seen people kill the devil. I just want you to know that. We have been in a meeting where someone said, I've just killed the devil. And you're like, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure he's still around. In fact, he might not even be here tonight. I'm sorry to say it to you. He may actually be in India because he's not everywhere all the time. The Holy Spirit is. So he might not even be here tonight. One of his cohorts, one of the other demonized angels could be here. But we have seen and heard such weird stuff. I'm not talking about any of that. But I am inviting us into a story that might be a little foreign and a little different to you. Tim Keller, I'm a great fan of his. Tim passed recently, led a beautiful church in New York, author, speaker, a kind man, had the privilege of meeting him a few times. But he said this, speaking of spiritual warfare, he said in the secular West, in the secular modern West, and I quote, everything, there it is, everything has a natural cause and therefore a scientific explanation. Modernity says, none of this spiritual stuff. That's just mystical. That's just mythical. That's like legends from ancient Greek. Actually, modernity shouted at us, everything has a natural cause and therefore a scientific explanation. However, come the 20th century, and guess what? It didn't feel that way. All crime, violence, war, racism, cruelty, Keller argues, according to secular modernity, has a purely natural origin. Therefore, the answer lies in psychological or sociological solutions. So, we went through the Holocaust. Oops. The most educated nation on the planet. So, education did not prevent Germany from sending 6 million Jews to their death, never mind the millions of others whose lives were destroyed and butchered. Family systems broken up because dads went to war and moms went to the factories. Kids grew up without parents, were sent to the countryside to protect them. The most educated nation in the world, modernity said, let's educate people out of their sociological pathologies and we will find a greater humanity. Oops. It can't just be psychological and sociological. Ethnic cleansing, as we found in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Oops. Can't just be psychological and sociological re-education that's needed, and then we will all love each other and live happily ever after. Serial killings, and so we can go on, and so we can go on. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that is not just cerebral and emotional. There is a very real spirit world. There is a very real devil. Not capital D, that's not his name, nor is his name Satan or Satan. That's titles that describe who he is, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Professor Andrew Del Blanco of Columbia University, who refers to himself as a secular liberal. So he's an educator, an academic, and a liberal, and doesn't profess the faith. He said this in his book called The Death of Satan. The opening line reads, "A gulf has opened our culture between the visibility of evil and the intellectual resources to cope with it." He continues, "We have jettisoned the idea of cosmic evil. We don't speak of evil. We don't even like using the word evil because it implies values and judgment." We got a problem. Because what we deem psychological and sociological in heritage has not found a solution in those worlds. And ladies and gentlemen, the reason is we don't know our enemy. Centuries ago, a Chinese militarist, Sun Tzu, wrote a book that's still used in military warfare. He's in the Art of War. He said this: know your enemy. Listen to this interesting paragraph I found researching for this talk. He says, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not your enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. But if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Isn't that profound? So what do we have here? We have been taught spiritually that there is no devil. We can't really use that language. We can't speak about sin because that's very uncool. That's a value judgment. We don't want to use that language. So we deny having an enemy. But the problem is, Sun Tzu wrote about hundreds of years ago, if you don't know your enemy, you will be defeated. John Mark, who's done a great series on the world, the flesh, and the devil, and I draw some of the following from him. I'm going to take you to John chapter 8. I think there's a verse up there from it. I'm going to read a little bit more than that maybe. Are you still with me? Okay. Without trying to make a political or social point here, can I say this? From when I was young, my dad drilled into me, my job was to protect. It was my sisters initially, then my mother, then my society. So I grew up a soldier. Then I went to the South African Army and I spent years there as an infantry officer. I learned to fight for and protect those who are dear to me. The problem we have is when we take combat out of the language, who is going to protect you? Who's fighting for you? Never mind you, because a single individual cannot defeat an army. So who is fighting for you on your behalf? And Christians who say, well, I don't need Christian community. I'm so sad for them for many reasons, but particularly on this one. We pray for you, every one of you who calls Genesis home. We are fighting for you. Do you know that? At least 5 times a week, I go out on a prayer walk and the Spirit of God speaks to me about you. Some of you, unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say, I don't know your name, but I know your face. And God, like a slide deck, will pop up your face. And you won't even know, but I and other leaders are protecting you, crying out to God on your behalf, because that is our job. We are soldiering with you in your day-to-day existence. I urge you, I compel you, I am eager for you to get this, Paul said, contend for the faith. And there's some people who were with us who aren't anymore. Some ghosted us and some left kindly. But that doesn't mean God has left me off the hook. I still pray for them. as the slide deck pops up. Now, in this passage, John chapter 8 is arguably the primo passage, at least for today's conversation, around know your enemy. Jesus, in this great teaching, said this: you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. Now, who's he speaking to? The religious leaders of the day who felt that they were the children of Abraham. But his assessment of them, by what I see in you, you are living out your father's desire, small f, meaning diabolos, the devil. He is a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language. So whenever you hear the devil, my dear, dear friend, he is lying, no matter what he says to you. It's his native language. It's what he speaks. Meryl read Afrikaans to you. I could have read Afrikaans. It's my native language. That native language is to lie. For he is a liar and a father of lies. Yet, because I tell the truth, you do not believe me. Can any of you prove me guilty of sin? I'm telling the truth. Why don't you believe me? Whoever belongs to God, here's what God says. The reason you don't hear is that you don't belong to God. Wow, Jesus, if a modern pastor said that, people would be up in arms. Are you trying to say I'm not a Christian? I don't know. It's kind of there in the scriptures. Now, of course, we all have moments where we can't hear. I'm losing my hearing from being in music all of my life. And so there are times when Meryl speaks to me that I'm a little hard of hearing. I didn't get that. You know what I mean? Like, oh, sorry, babe. This hearing thing. I'm not talking about the little hearing thing. I'm talking about when our ear is more attuned to the native language of the liar. So what can we deduce from this, everyone? Number one is that Jesus acknowledges the devil's existence. It's not a myth or some antiquated theological proposition or some vague force for bad. The devil is real, he is living, and he is active. But he's not everywhere all the time. The devil comes from the Greek word diabolos, from which we get the word diabolical. And that essentially means slanderer and accuser. My dear, dear friend, know your enemy. Know your enemy. Revelation tells us that the accuser of the brethren, he is at you all the. Why are you so exhausted? Is it because you live in Southern California? Yeah, it can be. You drive an hour to work? Yep, that can help. But there is a fatigue that's more than that. There is an inner spiritual fatigue that is more than that. And I know none of you have been in military combat, but there is an adrenal surge that comes in combat which carries you. It's the fight, flight, or freeze. But once that comes down, it's like your whole body just implodes. So you are fighting every day out there, whether you want to or not. It doesn't matter. Me too. And there are times at the end of the day I think, why am I so exhausted? Is it because I'm old? Maybe. Or is it because I am perpetually at war? For me, for Meryl, for the kids, for the grandkids, for our eldership team, for you. My sword is drawn, has to be. My pistol is cocked and loaded, has to be. The slanderer and the accuser, his primary tactic, dear friend, is to lie. Let me rush a little. Let me go a bit quicker. Jesus spoke about the truth will set you free, but the enemy is the father of lies, for he is about untruth. I'm going to land somewhere. Other tactics that he uses, like disease, division, distraction, depletion, discouragement, are all lower grade tactics that he uses. But lie is his number one thing. Why? Because he knows it works. Joseph Goebbels, who was the Nazi propaganda leader, I'm sorry it's full of history and military stuff today, but he said this: a lie told once remains a lie, but a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. How old are you? 20? 22, 25, 27, 45. I'm 66. Do you know how many times the enemy has said the same lie to me? Can you count that out in years? Can you count that out numerically? Because he knows if I repeat the same lie over and over again, I'm ugly and I'm fat, might be your lie. And you wake up in the morning and your hair's like this and you haven't got makeup on and you look in the mirror and say, yep, I'm ugly and fat. No one's going to want to marry. So the enemy says, high five. Got it. You and I, we together. We're on assignment together. I'm committed to destroying you. You are helping me. We are jamming. Why? Well, in his book, The Truth About Lives, David Tackle says this. For example, the enemy is above all a deceiver. And just as Satan is called the father of lies, the Holy Spirit is called the Spirit of truth. These are not given lightly, these titles. They symbolize the great tension between good and evil. Evil must distort and confound those realities. Here it comes, in order to seduce people into participating in their own self-destruction. Can I read that again? Evil must distort and confound these realities in order to seduce people into participating in their own self-destruction. Because you and I, when we agree with the devil, even in a whisper and a smile on our face, we're actually participating in our own self-destruction. I'm going to refer to one more book. And then I want to ask you, what are the lies he uses against you? Well, what's the one lie that he keeps using against you? Pummeling you. Pummeling you. Pummeling you. Remember when he was with Jesus in the wilderness? And that last little verse in Luke chapter 4, last verse about the wilderness, it said the devil left him for an opportune moment. So you have a good day. You're feeling pretty good about yourself. He sows that little lie, like C.S. Lewis in the Screwtape Letters. And you don't, no, I'm not that guy. He says, all right, I'm going to wait for an opportune time. I'm going to wait till it's 1 o'clock in the morning when you should have been in bed 3 hours earlier. But ill discipline keeps you up. Now you're tired, you're exhausted, your defense mechanisms are a little down, and he comes again and says, oh, hi. Did I remind you how fat and ugly you were? Jeez, I feel fat, man. I had so many carbs today. All those fries from In-N-Out, double, animal style. I mean, I feel fat. He says, oh, you are. Oh, you are so ugly. You've just participated with him in your self-destruction. Interesting. A few years ago, The Coddling of the American Mind was released by two authors, Jonathan Haidt and Greg Ludiakonoff. Is that how you say his name? And basically, these authors, not Christians, made the case that in our culture's embraced three great untruths in the last 10 years. Untruth number one, the untruth of fragility. What doesn't kill you makes you weaker. What were we told? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So, oh, no. I am not supposed to ever feel sad. So if I feel sad, I'm going to be weaker. I was never created to be vulnerable. So if I'm feeling vulnerable, it's obviously something I've done that's wrong and negative. So I'm agreeing, says these academics. They're not saying it's the devil. I'm sitting there saying 100%. I can't be robust and gutsy and strong and stand up to my circumstance and situation. Oh, no. What doesn't kill you makes you weaker. Untruth number two, the untruth of emotional reasoning. Always trust your feelings. Feelings are the central yardstick of every decision we make. So if I don't feel good about something, I don't do it. I don't feel good about going to church tonight. The enemy says, oh, I love you. Oh, you are fabulous. You don't feel, oh, you really don't feel good about going to community tonight. Oh, Tuesday night, table community with Dana and Stu. Yeah, it's been a long week for me. I don't want to make the effort. Oh, hug from the devil, diabolos, the accuser, slanderer. Oh, well done. You are so tired. It's been a tough day. It's absolutely not, devil. Absolutely not. I need community. When my defenses are down and I'm exhausted and I'm emotionally fragile, what do I need? Like Moses, I need an Aaron and to hold up my arms right now because I'm going down. I don't sit and pour myself the fourth drink and watch another Netflix show that's marginal as a replacement for holy communion, a holy people celebrating God life together. Oh no, I don't choose that. I love you. The third untruth, the untruth of us versus them. Life is a battle between good people and evil people. And if you don't agree with me, you are evil people. That's the political landscape right now. If you are not Trumpian, everyone who is a non-Trumpian is evil. That's the message. And if you are not with Kamala, you are with Trump, you are evil. No, we're not. We're a beautiful nation crafted by God at its very roots and foundation to coexist in arguably one of the wealthiest, most prosperous nations that history has ever found. We have never lived with such prosperity and blessing in all the thousands of years of human civilization. And the enemy says, just tell the other people they're evil. Make sure that everyone in the nation hears just how evil Kamala is. And as for Trump, oh my word, you know his history? Oh, he's evil. Really? Is that the divine narrative? Or is that the demonic narrative? Dana, you read this book too. The untruth of fragility, the untruth of emotional reasoning, and the untruth of us versus them. I haven't described it well. Is there anything you want to add? Oh, thank you, Dana. I agree with you. You are a good person. All right, I am coming into land. Let me ask you, and I am going to ask you, what is the one lie the enemy repeats against you? You know it's coming, and you hear it when it comes. My bad. Start with.
Mine's a pretty deep one, not good enough.
Explain it.
It's just a well-worn lie that the enemy has used for decades. The crazy thing is I actually have achieved, but it's weird how when that lie comes, everything I've done or am doing is put into question, and I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. It's just an insidious lie, which I've learned to recognize, thankfully.
Stu, what's the one lie?
Yeah, well, here we go.
You can lie about your lie.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's that you'll never be free. You'll look at this life, this God life that is described in Scripture and lived by Jesus, and you're never going to have it. No matter what you do, you're never going to get there. So just why try?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's not good, but it is. Claire, where are you? What's your lie, girl?
I think, yeah, we're all just hopping into it, I guess. But I think there's always been a lot of lies for me that I will push people away or that something that I do will make me unlovable. And that comes with people, but also it comes with Jesus. That like, man, could I mess up to the point that he won't love me anymore? So I think there's a little bit of that unlovability that comes up sometimes.
Beautiful. David, what about you? What's your lie?
I think often the lie like I'm unqualified, or I think similar like I can become unqualified. So just whatever that looks like, whatever circumstance, I think the enemy often tells me like, you don't have the skill, you don't have the whatever it takes to do that.
Thank you. Josh?
I'd say for me, for those who grow up and they know they have a calling on their life to be in the kingdom of heaven and pursue that calling, I think the number one thing I constantly feel is unworthy to lead, because of this, that, or the other. You're unworthy. You can't live up to that calling that you feel and have felt. So that is something I feel like I'm, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, whatever it is, it's like, okay, no, this disqualifies you for this. So I'd say that feeling of unworthiness is the biggest thing I fight.
Isaac, we've got to have one college student. And if any of you don't have a lie, I can help. I can give you a lie, We can dispense them. What's the lie the enemy throws at you?
That I can do it on my own. Or like I don't need the Lord's help. Like, oh yeah, God gave me these things, so I've got it now. But it's like so not true. And I need to remind myself of the truth that I'm nothing without the Lord. What's your biggest lie, Chris?
What's my biggest lie? No, I'm beyond that stage now. I don't. What's that, love? Yeah. What's my biggest lie? That I don't win. That somehow I'll screw up and I won't win. Yeah. Is that a fair reflection, my love? Sorry? Succeed, yeah. I suppose, I won't explain why. So let me just land, because I want us to come to communion. But do you understand how important this is? I mean, I really would love to go around to every one of you and say, what's your lie? Because this is big. And you don't realize the extent to which that lie crushes you. Because it's persistent, it's nagging, it's like a little yapping dog. Now, don't think I don't like dogs. I don't like yapping dogs. But do you understand what happens? So I've just handpicked a few. The enemy comes to you and sits on your shoulder and he says, well, I don't know, man. He whispers to you, I can't trust God. I trusted him once and it went all wrong. Yeah, I don't trust God. I kind of like Jesus, but I can't trust God. And the enemy says, yeah, that's right. So now you're facing a situation, should I get serious with this person or should I take this job? And what comes out is, no, can't trust God. It went pear-shaped the last time. I'm not good enough. Meryl mentioned that. Just out of interest, how many have that lie at them with some frequency? I'm not good enough. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Brené Brown, and she doesn't profess to pursue the same life as we do by faith, but she made a point. I was just listening to her driving while I was driving, and she said, shame is that warm feeling that washes over us. Here it comes, making us feel small, flawed, and never good enough. That is a scientist's conclusion after interviewing thousands of people. Shame, which is what the enemy gives. God never gives us shame. God gives us guilt. Guilt is the trigger that brings me back on course. Shame is what the enemy puts on me to do what? To keep me small, flawed, and never good enough. I'm too much for people to handle. People don't know what to do with me. I got that from my therapy wife. I'm not loved, and I'm not lovable. I actually would love you to put up your hand, but I think that would be awkward because I think we'd be surprised how many wrestle with that. Especially if someone breaks up with you, you're not dating anymore or whatever. That the enemy just sits there quietly. It's because you're not loved or lovable. You'll never be loved. And you sit there by yourself thinking, you know what, I don't know if I'll ever be loved. Cool. I'm a failure. No, you failed. That's all that happened is you failed. I failed my freshman year at college because I partied. I'm not a failure. I will never get rid of the shame. Please listen to me on this one. I would imagine every person in this room carries an act or a moment of shame, something that happened that you wished with all of your heart never happened. And the enemy's commitment is to remind you of that. Now, you were 14 years old when it happened, maybe 16. You've come to faith. You've repented of all of your sin. You know Isaiah says that he remembers my sin no more. We know all of that, but in your vulnerable moment at 1 o'clock in the morning on that fourth drink, it's like, am I ever going to get rid of the shame? The enemy says, oh, hell no. I cannot be forgiven. What I did, I can absolutely not be forgiven. This was a big one. If people knew, they would never accept me. And what the enemy can keep in the dark, he's got you shackled up. He's got me shackled up. Don't go to community, because if people find out, you will never be accepted. To Stu's point number 9, I'm almost done. I will never change. The enemy says, oh, that's your lot, buddy. That's you forever. You will never change. And lastly, and I got this from Merrill again, I deserve to be miserable. Now, those are 10. But which is the one the enemy uses against you, dear friends? We're going to come to communion now. About 30 of us prayed before the gathering and stood over here and prayed over every cup, prayed over every bread, even the grape where the candles have gone out. We didn't pray over the candles, though. We should have, Dana. They would have still been burning. But because we want you to know your enemy, to recognize the lie the enemy uses that burns you over and over and over, brands you with an unwashable brand. Just when you're vulnerable or when you make some big decisions. You make a big decision tonight, I am landing. Make a big decision tonight and the enemy says, okay, it's fine. I'll wait. I'll wait. And I'm going to come back because it works. And the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took bread and he broke it. And he said, this is my body that's broken for you. Can I change that a little bit without heresy? This is my body broken so that you can walk free of the lie that's used against you over and over and over again.
Thank you for listening to the Genesis Costa Mesa podcast. To find more information about our community, feel free to visit our website, www.genesiscostamesa.com, or find us on social media at Genesis Costa Mesa.